That's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody, I'm in my car. Crazy. Welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, narrated by Disney, or Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it, Legends. Today I have for you, I also have got my mouth, I apologize, the finale to the Junior Jedi Knights series. These last 3 books are written by Rebecca Moesta, the wife of Kevin J. Anderson. And do I like these ones as much as the previous 3? Actually, no. I think I like the first half more. There's stuff I really appreciate about this half that is particularly a lot better, but the main, I guess, plot that kind of follows through in the last 2 books are kind of, I'm not the biggest fan. But that being said, I still highly recommend reading it. So, also, sorry, I got I'm waiting on somebody, so yeah. But book 4 by Rebecca Moesta is, of course, Anakins Quest. Now, this is kind of continuing off of what was kind of established in the previous 3 books, which is that Anakin Solo is still worried about that name, about that legacy affecting who he should be. But him, just like us, knows that Luke went through the Dagobah caves to kind of have these visions that kind of helped guide him on his path. And so, Anakin wants to do the same thing. And at the same time, so does Tahiri. And Master Icarit goes with them. And a new character. Probably my favorite character that Rebecca Moesta created here. Which is Older. Now, Older is a lot different than what like Raynar was, because Raynar's kind of a new character. They'll kind of be like a bigger thing in the next arc of Young Jedi Knights. But Older is actually an important life lesson, and I know Matt talked about this too, but it's really good how it's handled. I'll save it for the end. But this kid wants to be a Jedi, just like all of us, right? All of us who watched Star Wars growing up thought being a Jedi would be so cool. And that's what he wants to do. But he doesn't seem to be particularly strong in the Force. In fact, he hasn't been able to show any Force potential as of yet. But he goes with Anakin and Tahiri to see if he can see anything in the cave. Anakin, of course, sees Vader and Palpatine and all that stuff that he fears. Tahiri sees the Sand People and other things. Older sees absolutely nothing. He sees a dirty cave. Quiet. Void of anything. And so, they also fight a bunch of things that are on Dagobah because, of course, right? We also finally get Icarit's backstory. We learn how Icarit became a Jedi and about his people, which is really interesting. Now, as I was going through this, I talked in the Discord servers about, like, how does this work? Because it says that he was in hibernation for 400 years for this whole Golden Globe crisis in the previous 3 books. Now, what's important to note is that he says in the next book that he was trained by a certain someone. I'll talk about that in the next book. we're going to talk about that up next. But it was a really interesting conversation I had. It was just random, if any of you know who that is on Discord. Yeah. Overall, out of the three, I think that Anakins Quest is probably my favorite of Rebecca Moesta's Junior Jedi Knights books. Moving on, Book 5, Vader's Fortress. So here, we actually get, and I of course mention them when we have them, a contradiction in the expanded universe. We don't really have a fix for it. Matt says newly refurbished in his original review of this. But Tyone talks about her ship, which she claims to be brand new, which it's not, because when that ship was introduced to her, it was in a short story that took place before Jedi Academy, which Junior Jedi Knights takes place long after Jedi Academy. So, I don't know how this hiccup happened, but the best that you could possibly do is simply go as Matt Wilkins did and say when she said that, she was meaning newly refurbished. Though that clearly was not the intent when writing it. But, you know, the EU is mostly consistent, but you do have these hiccups now and again, especially in earlier works. Most of the future stuff is usually pretty solid with no errors whatsoever. Like, I can't think of a single prequel novel that really has any contradictions. You have some sucky prequel novels like Jedi Trial and Cestus Deception, but not really any contradictions, because by that point they're pretty jam-packed. The earlier you go in the EU, the more contradictions you'll find, but even still, if there's a contradiction, most of the time, this isn't one of them, this is just kind of like wave it away, most of the time you'll have an adequate retcon that came down the line to basically fix it and make it whole so you can have no issues with it. But this one doesn't really have it. I guess it was newly refurbished and she just worded it poorly. My only other note is that Orlok sucks. Orlok is this mage. He knows magic. He doesn't. He's a con man. You learn that in the next book, but you already kind of knew. He's a con man. Like a no chemistry Lando. But we also have Ikarit mention the fact that Yoda was his teacher, which is again why I mentioned in the previous book. If he was in hibernation for 400 years, you know, how long does it take to become a Jedi? Because he was a master by the time he went into hibernation. The hibernation basically just stopped him from aging, I guess. Kind of like a light side version of Asherod Het. So, me and Random were talking, like, well, Yoda had to be around 500 something when he trained him. And Ikarit's species, thanks to Random, I didn't know this prior because I'm not good with source books, they only live about 100 years. So Ikarit's got to be about like 50, 60 here in these books. You know, so that means Yoda was like in his, you know, mid to late 500s when he trained Master Ikarit, or even 500 or whatever. But that would be the earliest dating of a story with Yoda that we really have. It's not really a story, he kind of just talks about how Yoda trained him, but it's not contradicting anything because 500 years would be long before even the prequels came out. You know, the prequels are about 30 years ago at this point in the timeline. But, you know, that's 500 years. That's the time period after, that's like the halfway point of the after Darth Bane, but before the prequel trilogy. So, we have that. So, that is what it is. But I thought it was a really interesting discussion. And also we discussed, it'd be really cool, little side note, you know, I'm going to Legends Con in September. What if I asked Sean Stewart if he'd be willing to make like a, you know, unofficial, completely fan fiction, but we're totally going to accept it as canon, short story of Ikarit and Yoda written by Sean Stewart. I think that'd be kind of cool. Probably won't happen, but it would be cool. But yeah, Book 5, they go to Vader's fortress. They go to Vajun, which I think in Jedi Academy or Jedi Outcast, I don't remember, but you explore that planet. It has Vader's fortress, you know, there's a lot of booby traps and stuff. They're looking for Kenobi's blade, Kenobi's lightsaber, because, you know, Luke gave Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber to Mara Jade at the end of the Thrawn trilogy, but since episode 4, Kenobi's blade has just been gone. But I guess, and it makes sense, Vader kept it around as like a trophy. Now, there is another thing where there's a role-playing game or something. Matt talked about this a bit in his original review, where these people went to go capture, you know, Kenobi's lightsaber as like a relic or something. That was also kind of a contradiction. Though it's a role-playing game, so they don't necessarily have to succeed in finding it. So that could just be the case. But a little hiccup there as well. Rebecca Moesta just didn't seem to try to do as much homework as other people do, which is fine. It's not a huge deal, but it is, you know, little hiccups here and there that a little bit more homework could have helped avoid. And then, yeah, we have 6, Kenobi's Blade. In the previous book, Orlok had promised Uldor that he could train him, you know, in the ways of the mage so he could use the Force and stuff, but he rejected him. But then this book, you know, after Orlok has run away, Uldor is still trying to learn, just like Anakin and Tahiri are trying to learn, except that Anakin and Tahiri are actually doing things. He still has failed to provide a single ounce of Force sensitivity or to have done anything. So eventually he goes to Exis Station, which is where Luke originally had met Tion all those years back in that short story, and he meets up with Orlok, and Orlok promises everything, but it turns out it's all a sham. Tyone, Ikarit, Tahiri, and Anakin go to rescue him, and Orlok, of course, gets defeated, of course, and that's kind of the whole story. Again, the main story is The redeeming parts about this is the more character interactions we get with Tahiri and Anakin, more Ikarit is a good time because Ikarit's great. And you have to cherish every moment you have with that little fella. Those who know, know. But the strongest aspect to these books, written by Rebecca Moesta, books 4 through 6 of Junior Jedi Knights, is Yodor, whatever, his character. Because, as I'm sure you kind of figured out by now, he's not Force sensitive. He's just a normal dude. But his dream, his childhood dream, can't be fulfilled. Not for a lack of effort or trying. He just is incapable of accomplishing it. How many times have you had a dream of doing something, but then you realize, you just can't. That's not your thing. That's not what you've been gifted with. So it's something pretty profound to teach, because remember, these are for kids. So for a kid to read that. But what's great too is that by the end of the story, he joins, this Coruscant, or says he's going to join this Coruscant flight thing, which helps, people in need, refugees, stuff like that. So in his small way, he could be like his friends and be a Jedi Knight, helping out the little people, even if he isn't actually a Jedi. In fact, I don't know if it's ever stated in the New Jedi Order books, but during the time of the prequels in the expanded universe, there were these things called these Antarian Rangers, which were these normal people who didn't have Force potential, but wanted to help the Jedi. And so they would do things like escort people off, planets and stuff, like refugees or people that need to get out of the war zone. Or sometimes they'd actively, besides just stormtroopers, they'd actually help the Jedi. I think that's why some Jedi didn't immediately die after Order 66, because they didn't have clone troopers. They had these Antarian Rangers who were just normal day people who, idolized the Jedi so much that they wanted to help. So, in a way, that's kind of what Uldor's becoming. But I really love his character arc in these 3 books. I think it's really good. And, I won't spoil anything. But again, everything connects, everything fits. you will see him again, and it's really nice. Like, again, you could read New Jedi Order without reading this, right? Junior Jedi Knights. You could do that. And Older would just be some cool dude in a ship. But knowing the story, knowing where he comes from, it makes you appreciate those little details so much more. Again, it's like an Avengers level, like crossover event, right? Like, all the time you spent reading other things is rewarded and rewarded and rewarded, and you just feel like, yes, I spent my time, my hard time. I could be doing anything else to read this book, and now I'm being validated in this series for having read it. It's so cool, and it does such a good job and respects everybody who came in, and it just does a phenomenal job. And I can't wait to see him again. He's a great character. You know, we only got 6 Junior Jedi Knights books, but I wish, you know, I think there's also a short story with him actually during New Jedi Order. I forget, but I think that is the case. But regardless, here's my favorite aspect of these books, at least written by Rebecca Moesta. The previous trilogy, my favorite thing was Tahiri. I love Tahiri. But yeah, absolutely phenomenal series. Up next, we return to Young Jedi Knights by Kevin J. Anderson and Rebecca Moesta with the Diversity Alliance arc. So I hope you all join me for that. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Sharing helps out a ton. Don't forget to subscribe. And as always, I will see you in the next video. May the Force be with you. Bye-bye.